So let's continue our syllabus. This is chapter 7 of from Vistas. As you requested for advanced rise and O level. Fine. So we will begin with that. So first of all, a very brief introduction of Colin Dexter, the writer. Colin Dexter, whose full name is Norman Colin Dexter, an English writer, an English crime writer. Now you must be thinking that how is he a crime writer? Crime writer is the one who is writing the stories of crime and criminals. And in this way, he has created a series of his novels. And the principal character of those novels was Inspector Morse. Just as you must have read in your childhood days, Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, right? So Sherlock Holmes was a detective, a character, an imaginary character created by Conan Doyle. Similarly, Agatha Christie, a very renowned author, she had created a detective character in her novels, and the name of the character was Hercule Poirot. Similarly, Colin Dexter, he had created this Inspector Morse. So when Inspector is there, it is but natural that the story must be of crime and criminal, right? And not only that he had written the series of novels, but of course, there had been TV serials also based on his stories. And this Inspector Morse series of novels, it was written between 1975 and 1999. Ivan's Tries an Old Level is also a story of a criminal who has a strong urge, a strong desire to do a crime. And he is unable to control it, he's unable to check it, despite knowing the fact that he would land up in trouble. He cannot control this. And as a result, many a times he is being caught, he is put behind the bars, he escapes. Again, he is caught, he is locked up in the cell, and then again he runs away. So this keeps on happening, right? Now, right in the beginning of the lesson, here is a statement. The point is to be discussed, in fact, definitely after the lesson. But before that, here it says, should criminals in prison be given the opportunity of learning and education? Now, when we discuss this issue, Manish, you know what happens? Many people debate about it, that a criminal is not a criminal by birth. There might be certain circumstances that have compelled him to be a criminal. So why should he be deprived of his right to learn and get education? Absolutely. And this is what, in India also, in our prison system, the criminals, even hardcore criminals, when they are put behind the bars, but if they have a desire to study and enhance their academic skills and elevate their academic status, then they are given that right. And they do get degrees while being behind the bars. If you just surf on the net, you will find that in Tihar jail, so many jail inmates, while being in the prison, those who have the interest in IT sector, they are doing computer courses, they are doing degree courses from the universities. And when there is an examination time, then they are being escorted to the examination center under the security, and they are enabled to appear for the exam. So in this way, our constitution does not deprive them of their right to learn and study. But the point here is, if the criminals in the prison, should they be given this opportunity? This is what we have already discussed, that yes, they should be given the opportunity when there is the provision in the constitution. But after reading this story, Maybe you change your opinion, I change my opinion, but before that, again, it needs to be pondered over, it needs to be thought over. Fine. So you will just think about it. This first statement we will discuss after the finishing of the lesson. Yes, here it is dramatis personae. Dramatis personae is a German word which means the characters involved in the drama. Personae, people, characters. Dramatis, drama. The characters involved in drama. The secretary of the examination board, who is going to conduct exam, the governor of HM prison, Oxford, James Evans, a prisoner. The title says Evans tries an O-level. So you can easily make out that James Evans is the principal character of this story. The whole story revolves around him. So in other words, we can say the protagonist of the story. He was a prisoner, the lone prisoner in the story. Mr. Jackson, a prison officer. Mr. Stephens, a prison officer. The Reverend S. McAleary, an invigilator. S. McAleary is an invigilator who is on duty during exams, invigilating. But he has been called the Reverend. Now, the Reverend means respectful. Why this Reverend has been written for S. McAleary? Because S. McAleary is a churchman. He is a clergyman from the church who has been given this duty. So the people who are from the church, the priest, the clergyman, the father, the brother, they deserve respect. So that's why the Reverend is used before their names. Mr. Carter, Detective Superintendent, and Mr. Bell, Detective Chief Inspector. Right in the beginning of the story, we will deal with the secretary, the governor, James Evans, and Mr. Jackson. These four characters. Yes, of course, Mr. S, the Reverend S. McAleary also. The other characters we will meet in the later part of the story. Now, the story, as I told you, it revolves around James Evans, a prisoner. He is famously known as Evans the Break. Why? Because thrice he had been brought behind the bars and thrice he had escaped. And now he is appearing in a test, an O-level German course. Now this German course, genuinely, if he is studying German, genuinely, if he is giving the exam, he really wants to have an academic qualification in German language. That is quite unpredictable. But before we read, we cannot conclude what it could be or what it is going to be. So when we say Evans tries on an O-level, meaning he is taking a test in O-level German exam because he wants to have that O-level academic qualification. O-level must be an advanced German course at that time, right? But today, as such, I didn't find an O-level course. It must be very, very advanced then. I hope it is clear to you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All precautions have been taken to see to it. So this is the situation now. Okay. The story takes place in the cell where Evans is sitting to take the exam. Now, do remember, Evans is not an ordinary student or an ordinary examinee. We have not to forget that he is a criminal. We have not to forget that he is not in the examination hall, but he is in a cell. That cell has been changed into an examination room for him. So it is certainly that precautions would be taken, elaborate arrangements would be made to make it sure that the test is conducted smoothly, and what more is the concern, that Evans does not escape. So complete security arrangements are also done. All precautions have been taken to see to it that the O-level German examination arranged in the prison for Evans does not provide him with any means of escape. Not an inch of carelessness to be shown by the people over there, not an inch of the opportunity to be given to Evans to escape. And if he doesn't escape, then it would be considered that O-level German examination has been conducted smoothly, right? So it was in early March when the secretary of the examinations board received the call from Oxford prison. Why from Oxford prison? Because Evans was there in Oxford prison. So it was in March when the secretary of the examination board, he received a call. That is, the governor of the Oxford prison, he sent him a call. It's a slightly unusual request, Governor, but I don't see why we shouldn't try to help. Just the one fellow, you say, when he received a call from the governor of the Oxford prison, he learned that the governor wanted to conduct a German exam for one student only in the cell. So the secretary finds it quite an unusual request. Why an unusual request? Usually the request is made by the schools, the colleges, to conduct an exam. To conduct an exam for a number of students, not for a single, not for a solitary examinee. So it was unusual request. Still, he agreed to help because he says, I don't see why we shouldn't try to help. There is no scope that we shouldn't help. Of course, we will help. And then he confirms that there is only one student, as you said. There, that's it. The governor replies and reconfirms, yes, there is only one student, chap called Evans. He gives him name, that the student, the boy who is appearing for exams is Evans. Started night classes in O-level German last September. Says he is dead keen to get some sort of academic qualification. He says that he had started his classes last September only. Night classes he is taking, and says he is dead keen. He is dead keen. He is extremely interested. He is very keen to get some sort of academic qualification. Is he any good? A few things. The secretary of the examination board, he tries to verify. He says, is he good? He was the only one in the class. So you can say he has had an individual tuition all the time, really. When the secretary wants to know about his performance, the governor reports to him that he is the solitary student in the class. He is not accompanied by any other student. So he gets all individual attention and tuition. Would have cost him a packet if he had been outside. Would have cost him a packet, meaning it would have cost him a lot of money. If he had got this tuition or if he had got this education from outside privately, because he had shown interest of learning German while being in the jail. So the prison authorities, the cell, they are providing, the prison authorities, the jail authorities, they are paying for his academics. And if he had been doing it privately, it would have been very expensive for him. Well, Let's give him a chance, shall we? Anyway, the secretary seems to be very keen to help this boy. That's jolly kind of you. He expresses his appreciation and praise. The governor expresses his praise for the secretary. What exactly is the procedure now? He says, okay, you just tell me what is the process we have to follow so that he appears in the test. Oh, don't worry about that. I'll be sending you all the forms and stuff. What is his name? You say, Evans? Then secretary tells him that he would send him all the forms and all the documents which are required to be filled up by him. He just reconfirms the name Evans, James Roderick Evans. It sounded rather grand. Now it sounded better when he gave his full name. Just one thing, Governor, he is not a violent sort of fellow, is he? He is trying to find out more details about Evans. So he asked Governor, is he a violent, a quarrelsome kind of student? I don't want to know his criminal record or anything like that, but he says, no criminal record is needed. But simply I wanted to know about his behavior, his personality. No, there is no record of violence. Governor tells him the truth that no, he is not violent sort because there is no such evidence where he had indulged in any kind of violence. Quite a pleasant sort of chap, they tell me. He says that he had heard that he is a very pleasant, he has a very pleasing personality otherwise. Bit of a card, really. Bit of a card is a phrase. This phrase means witty. Bit of a card, he is witty. He is witty, he is humorous. One of the stars, just a minute. Yes. One of the stars at the Christmas concert. He gives him more the details about Evans now. He says he is witty, he is a little humorous, and he is a star at the Christmas concert. He performs at the Christmas concert. Imitations, you know, the sort of thing Mike Yarwood stuff. Imitations meaning copying. He can copy easily. You know, the sort of thing Mike Yarwood stuff. Mike Yarwood stuff was an English comedian who was an impressionist. An impressionist meaning the one who can impersonate. Do you know what is impersonation? Yes, Manish, do you know what is to impersonate? Impersonating. Do you know impersonating?
Ma'am, no.
No, okay, no problem. Impersonating is when you pretend to be someone who in reality you are not. Right? But you pretend yourself to be someone so convincingly that you can befool others. Right? So he was very good at imitations like that comedian Mike Yarwood stuff. No, he is just a congenital kleptomaniac, that's all. Another revelation, governor conveys to the secretary about Evans. Now you see that when governor is talking about Evans, meaning we get to know what kind of character Evans is. Do remember, so all these words you must remember if you get to describe the character of Evans. Okay, so he is just a congenital, natural, a natural kleptomaniac. Kleptomaniac is from kleptomania. Kleptomania is to have a strong desire to steal. So strong a desire to steal that you cannot check it, you cannot control it. You cannot refrain yourself from stealing. So kleptomaniac is the person who has a strong desire to steal. So this is what he said. He is just a congenital kleptomaniac. Naturally, he is a kleptomaniac who cannot keep a check on himself. And I think, as I have already told you in the beginning, that how repeatedly he is put behind the bars, he escapes. He knows what the outcome would be, what the outcome of his actions would be, yet he is unable to control himself and he tries all the ways to escape, and he does escape. The governor was tempted to add something else, but he thought better of it. He could add more the details about Ivan's to the secretary, but then he thought it's better. It's enough. He would look after that particular side of things himself. That this is quite sufficient to satisfy the secretary. Presumably, said the secretary, you can arrange a room where, presumably, the secretary said, I believe, I think. Governor, you can arrange a room where, meaning where Evans is. Of course, in the cell, in the jail, you can arrange the room where he can take his exam. No problem. He's in a cell on his own. If you have no objections, he can sit the exam in there. Governor assures him, no problem. We have the room. Right now, he is in a cell. He is in a particular room of the jail. And if the secretary of the exam has no objection, no complaints, then Evans can sit in his cell only and can take the exam there. That's fine. He agreed. And we could easily get one of the persons from St. Mary's Mags to invigilate if that's. And then governor asked that they could easily arrange one of the persons from St. Mary Mags. St. Mary Mags is a church. This is a church of England. It is actually St. Mary Magdalene Church, quite an old church in English parish in Magdalen Street, Oxford. It is still there. So what it means that they could easily arrange a churchman from St. Mary's Magdalene Church as supervisor to invigilate on Evans when he is taking exam. Fine, yes. Fine, yes, when he says that means that the secretary allows permission, he gives permission. That's fine. They seem to have a lot of persons there, don't they? He says, yes. In the church, there are a lot many such people who can be deputed for such work. The two men chuckled good-naturedly. They laughed quietly, and the secretary had a final thought. At least there is one thing. You shouldn't have much trouble keeping him incommunicado, should you? Secretary finally said, okay, everything is fine, but please take care that you shouldn't have much trouble keeping him incommunicado, meaning you should not allow him to talk to anybody. Meaning there should not be the people around that he talks to them. So he means to say that he will not be allowed to talk to anybody during the exam. The governor chuckled politely, laughed politely once more, reiterated his thanks, repeated his thanks, and slowly cradled the phone, and slowly put the phone back at its place. Evans, he uttered the name. Evans the Break, as the prison officers called him. Right in the beginning, I told you that Evans was famously known as Evans the Break by the prison officers. Why he was called Evans the Break? Because he had escaped.
I escaped 3 times.
Yes, because thrice he had escaped from prison. Thrice he had escaped from prison, and but for the recent wave of unrest in the maximum security establishments up north, he wouldn't now be gracing the governor's premises in Oxford. He had escaped from the prison 3 times, so there is always the possibility that he would try to break the jail again, meaning he would try to escape again. And moreover, for the recent wave of unrest, recently there had been some criminal activities in the maximum security establishment in North, even in highly secured places. Some criminal activities had happened. Therefore, Evans was not allowed in the residential area, in that very area where governor's residence was there in Oxford. And the governor was going to make absolutely certain that he wouldn't be disgracing them. And this time, governor was extra careful, extra alert, and was quite sure that this time Evans would not be able to disgrace governor and the corps. That this time they would not give Evans a chance to embarrass the prison authorities, prison officers, and the governor. Because you see that when they are on duty in their prisons, under their authority, if a prisoner escapes, it is their failure. It is an embarrassment for them. So this time the governor was very careful, very alert, because he did not want to disgrace the corps and the prison authorities. Not that Evans was a real burden, just a persistent, nagging presence. He says it was not so that Evans was a burden. No, Evans was not a burden, but he was a persistent, nagging presence, meaning his presence was causing discomfort. His presence was not comfortable. Why his presence was not comfortable? Because he was a kleptomaniac. Right? Just like a kleptomaniac. You don't know, he was such an unpredictable character. You don't know when he would have that urge to run away from the jail. And then too, like that imitator, like that comedian, he could easily impersonate. So that's how his presence was uncomfortable, that any of his activities could embarrass the prison authorities. I hope it is clear. He would be all right in Oxford, though the governor would see to that, would see to it personally. He said in Oxford, everything is fine, he would be there. Yet the governor would see to it personally, because this time governor does not want to take any chance. And besides, there was just a possibility that Evans was genuinely interested in O-level German. And there was just a possibility that yes, Evans was taking a test in O-level German and he was doing it genuinely. Just a slight possibility, just a very slight possibility. It is unpredictable. It was just a possibility or a slight possibility, just a very slight possibility. Nobody was sure. Why? Because he was such an unpredictable character. He was such an unpredictable man. You don't know when he says something seriously, is he really serious? It cannot be predicted. Where there is Evans, nothing can be said with certainty. At 8:30 p.m. on Monday, 7 June, Evans' German teacher took him by the hand in the heavily guarded recreational block just across from D Wing. D Wing is a particular wing of the prison. So it was Monday, 7 June, 8:30 p.m. The German teacher came, Evans' German teacher came. She shook him by his hand right? In the heavily guarded recreational block. The recreational block where, because of the presence of Evans, it was heavily guarded, meaning heavily secured. There was heavy security deployed. Although Evans was not a hardcore criminal, but Evans could not be trusted. Evans could not be trusted. He could not be given any liberty. Evans had already befooled the cops 3 times, so now they did not want to take the chance again. Anyway, that German teacher came and said, Guten Glück, Herr Evans. This is in German, meaning good luck. Pardon? Evans did not understand. Do try to understand, Manish. This is something to be noted. Evans is taking O-level German exam, and when the teacher addresses him and tells him good Glück, wishes him good luck, in German, he is unable to understand. He doesn't know German. I said good luck for tomorrow. Okay, thanks, sir. I mean, oh, danke schön. Danke schön, again the German word, which means thank you very much. Anyway, then he thanks in the German language. You haven't a cat and hell's chance of getting through, of course, but the teacher makes out he cannot achieve his academic qualification. He says, you haven't a cat. You haven't a cat. You don't have the capability. In hell's chance of getting through, you don't have the capability to achieve success. You are not capable enough to achieve academic qualification. Getting through meaning you cannot achieve academic qualification successfully. This is what the teacher meant to say. I may surprise everybody, said Evans. Evans says, so you will see. I would surprise everyone. Now again, the point to be noted, that what kind of surprise would he give? Would he really surprise by getting his academic qualifications? Would he really qualify O-level examination? And that's how he would give a surprise? Or there is another kind of surprise which we are unaware of. At 8:30 the following morning, Evans had a visitor. 2 visitors, in fact. He tucked his grubby string vest into his equally grubby trousers and stood up from his bunk, smiling cheerfully. Morning, Mr. Jackson. This is indeed an honor. At 8:30 the next morning, Evans is visited by 2 people. And one of them is Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson is the prison officer. At the sight of Mr. Jackson, Evans had tucked his grubby string vest, grubby dirty, his dirty vest into his dirty trousers, and he stood up from his bunk. Bunk is a bed which is attached to the wall, right? So he just got up from his bunk, and he looked at Mr. Jackson, and very cheerfully he wished him good morning, though they were not on friendly terms yet. He just wished him good morning and complimented that it was an honor for him that he had been visited by the governor of the prison. Jackson was the senior prison officer on D wing. He was visited by 2 persons. One was Mr. Jackson, the prison officer. Another was Mr. Stephens, another this prison officer. And he and Evans had already become, Jackson was the senior prison officer on D Wing, and he and Evans had already become warm enemies. At Jackson's side stood Officer Stephens, a burly, surly looking man, only recently recruited to the profession. Along with Jackson, the other man was prison officer Stephens, who was a burly, surly looking man. Burly, surly looking man, burly, tall, strong, and surly looking man, bad tempered, unfriendly. Stephens does not appear to be a friendly man, and he had just recently been deputed to this profession. Jackson nodded curtly. And how is our little Einstein this morning then? Jackson just nodded very briefly, pointing out at him. How is our little Einstein? Just makes fun of him, calls him Einstein. And he says that how is our little Einstein this morning? To this, Evans replies, wasn't he a mathematician, Mr. Jackson? I think he was Jew, Mr. Jackson. He says he was. Don't you think that Einstein was a mathematician? And I think he was a Jew also. Ivan's face was unshaven, and he wore a filthy looking red and white bobble hat upon his head. It was, his face was unshaven. It needed to be shaved. He was wearing a dirty red and white bobble hat. Bobble hat is what kind of hat? The kind of hat you can see in this picture. A very common woolen cap that in India the people wear. Give me a chance, Mr. Jackson. I was just going to shave when you burst in. When you burst in, meaning when you entered. He wanted the governor's permission so that he could go and shave. He said that he was going for the same when they entered. Whether this is true or not, that you will find yourself. Yes, any problem until here?
No, ma'am.
Which reminds me, Jackson turned his eyes on Stephens. Now, Evans is about to go for shaving, and Jackson turns to Stephens. He says, which reminds me. What is this which? Which meaning Evans shaving. Evans shaving reminded Jackson and alerts him. What? He tells Stephens, make sure you take his razor out of the cell when he has finished scrapping that ugly mug of his. When he has finished scrapping is shaving. That ugly mug is the face. He tells Stephens to make it sure that you collect his razor from him after he finishes his shave. Clear? One of these days he will do us all a favor and cut his bloody throat. He says one of these days because he knows that you could be caught. So he might slit his throat with a blade. However, it would be a favor for them that they would get rid of this criminal. Yet, as per the protocols, as per the rules, he never wanted a knife to be or a sharp tool to be in the custody of Evans. Right? Is that clear? Because he is kleptomaniac, right? And a kleptomaniac person, since he will not be able to control his urge, so he can do anything just to befool the others, just to hoodwink others, right? For a few seconds, Evans looked thoughtfully at the man standing ramrod straight in front of him, a string of Second World War medals proudly paraded over his left breast pocket. For a few seconds, he kept on looking at Mr. Jackson, the man who was standing ramrod, the man who was standing, who was appearing to be a very strict disciplinarian. Ramrod meaning strict disciplinarian. And the man who had been wearing all his medals lined up on his pocket, decorated on his pocket. Mr. Jackson, was it you who took my nail scissors away? First, he looked at him thoughtfully. Then he asked Mr. Jackson, I don't find my nail cutters. Nail scissors, nail cutters. I don't find my nail cutters here. Is that you who had taken it away? Evans had always worried about his hands. Now you do remember that do remember this thing, right? There can be a question on something related to this, that he is always keeping such things with him. Razor, blade, nail cutter, nail filer, all these things. Why? Can you guess? Why would he love to keep such things? Yes? Manish, can you make out? Why would he keep such?
Ma'am, to scare the person who is vigilator. Or...
That is to use it in order to make a passage for himself so that he can escape. Sharp tools, they always help. You will often hear the criminals and the thieves, when they break in with the sharp tools only, right? Because they help them in scrapping, breaking, cutting, all these kinds of things, right? And your nail file too. Mr. Jackson said, I have taken away your nail file too, meaning he had taken away his nail filer also. Nail cutters and nail filers also. Look, for a moment, Ivan's eyes smoldered dangerously. He just stared at Mr. Jackson. Look, he was filled with anger. Smoldered, he was filled with anger. But Jackson was ready for him. Jackson was prepared for him. He knew his behavior. Orders of the governor Evans. He leaned forward and leered. He leaned forward. He leaned forward and leered, his voice dropping to a harsh, contemptuous whisper. You want to complain? Then he makes it clear. He leaned forward, he bent forward and leered and stared. The governor bent forward and stared at Evans and telling him, this is an order of the governor, Evans. And then his voice had become very harsh and contemptuous, disrespectful. And he says, you want to complain? If you want to complain against me? Evans shrugged his shoulders lightly. He moved his shoulders lightly, denying, expressing his denial that no, he doesn't want to complain. So this crisis was over here. You got half an hour to smarten yourself up, Evans, and take that bloody hat off. Then he reminds him that he has got half an hour to ready himself, to get ready for the test. He was wearing that hat, that dirty hat. He tells him to take that hat off. He should remove his hat. Me? Hat? Oof. Evans put his right hand lovingly on top of the filthy woolen and smiled sadly. Do you know, Mr. Jackson, it's the only thing that has ever brought me any sort of luck in life. Kind of lucky charm. If you know what I mean, And today I thought, well, with me exam and all that. Now this particular speech, is very important. Why important? Important in the sense it does reveal his character, that how he is so convincing. How he is so convincing. The governor is such a strict disciplinarian. When he tells him to take off his hat, meaning he has to take it off. But he is successfully convincing governor also by telling him, oh no, sir, it's my lucky charm and this is my exam. So how do you think I can part with this? This is what he meant to say. Now let's see if governor agrees with him or not. Buried somewhere in Jackson was a tiny core of compassion, and Evans knew it. Evans knew very well that governor who was so harsh, who was so strict, a disciplinarian, but somewhere in him is buried deep in his character. He has a tiny core of compassion. He has sympathy and compassion in his heart. He is compassionate. He is sympathetic. He knew how to win his sympathy. Now you see that Evans had done all his homework. When the writer says Evans knew it, it means that Evans had done all his homework. He knows that Jackson was very hard. Jackson was very tough, very strict disciplinarian. So he gathered all information about him. And then he might have thought how to convince or how to impress Mr. Jackson. And how successfully he convinced him and he allowed him to be there in the exam with his hat on. Right? Why he was keen to carry on sitting with his hat, that you will find later. Yes. Is everything fine? Any problem?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Just this once, then Shirley Temple. Just this once, then Shirley Temple. And then governor, he makes fun of him, calling him Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple was an English actress who was known for his long wavy hair. And Evans, he also had long wavy hair. If there was one thing that Jackson genuinely loathed, he disliked, he hated about Evans, it was his long wavy hair. So when he noticed his long wavy hair, he hated these. So he said, and get shaving. He said, fine, but you get shaving, meaning get your hair cut. At 8:45 the same morning, the Reverend Stuart McLeary left his bachelor flat in Broad Street and stepped out briskly toward Carfax. Now, what is this? The Reverend Stuart McLeary, that clergyman, that churchman from the church, who is going to be the supervisor, who is going to be the invigilator of Evans when Evans takes an exam. So he proceeds towards the prison. The weatherman reported temperatures considerably below the normal for early June, and a long black overcoat and a shallow-crowned clerical hat provided welcome protection from the steady drizzle which had set in half an hour earlier and which now spattered the thick lenses of his spectacles. Yes, there had been weather forecast that in early month of June, the weather would be lower than the normal. And so this supervisor, going to be supervisor, he was wearing black overcoat and a shallow-crowned clerical hat. Now, what is this shallow-crowned clerical hat? This kind of hat is called shallow-crowned clerical hat. He was wearing that so to protect himself because it had started drizzling. As per the weather forecast, it had started drizzling 1 hour earlier. and now the water had been splashing on his spectacles. In his right hand, he was carrying a small brown suitcase. Why? That is because the suitcase contained all the documents, the forms, the papers, the paper envelope, and a yellow invigilation form, and a special authentication card from the examination board. Authentication card is the verification card that verifies that Reverend McAlery was the supervisor, was going to be the invigilator or supervisor of the O-level German exam. A paper knife and a Bible. Why a Bible? Because from the Bible, this clergyman, he had to read somewhere. He had to speak. He had to give his sermons. These clergymen, these churchmen, that they would go from places to places. They were called by various organizations, by various associations to lecture upon one or the other thing. Such kind of lectures or discourses, they are called sermons. So he had been invited by a women's guild, a women's association. So he had to speak there. So that's why he was carrying a Bible also. And a current copy of the Church Times. Church Times is the name of the newspaper. The 2-hour examination was scheduled to start at 9:15 a.m. And Evans was lathering his face vigorously when Stephens brought in 2 small square tables and set them opposite each other in the narrow space between the bunk on the one side and on the other a distempered stone wall. Evans was lathering his face vigorously. He was lathering his face, meaning lathering is foaming his face with that shave foam, right? And then shaving. And in the meantime, Stephens, another prison officer, comes and he lays 2 small square tables opposite to each other. And next, Stephens brought in 2 hard chairs, the slightly less battered of which he placed in front of the table which stood near the cell door. One table was put near the cell door. Jackson put in a brief final appearance. Behave yourself, laddie. Jackson, right from the beginning, we learned that Jackson would make it sure that he personally takes care of everything and does not give Evans a chance to escape. So he comes briefly and cautions Evans to behave properly. Evans turned and nodded. When he tells Evans to behave properly, what does he mean? Yes, Manish, do you understand? When he tells him to behave yourself, what does he mean by saying that he should behave properly?
Ma'am, he want to convey that don't try to escape from.
Right, very good. That he should not play any trick this time. Okay, Evans turned and nodded. And these, Jackson pointed to the pin-ups of. Then Jackson had noticed a few posters on the wall. Pin-ups, posters on the wall. Posters which were pinned up on the wall. So he told him to remove these off, meaning remove these posters. Evans turned and nodded again. I was going to take them down anyway. A minister, isn't he? He said, yes, I was going to remove them. He is not a minister who has come here. The chap coming to sit in, I mean. He says, I knew. This chap, I knew. This man from the church is coming. Now do remember, how does he know that his invigilator would be a churchman, a clergyman? Jackson is a bit suspicious, quietly, but he does ask, how did you know that? How did you know that this chap is coming? Well, I had to sign forms, didn't I? And I couldn't help. He says, because I had signed so many papers from him. So I knew this. Well, I had to sign some forms, didn't I? And I couldn't help. Evans drew the razor carefully down his left cheek, meaning he is still shaving, and left a neat swath in the white lather. Can I ask you something, Mr. Jackson. He wants to ask Mr. Jackson, why did they have to bug me in this cell? Bug is an insect, but here bug is also to place a microphone in a room to record one's conversation or listen to someone, right? So they had placed a bug in his cell, but you see that Evans is so sharp that he had noticed that too. He pointed out to that bug and he says, why? I want to know why they had kept this microphone in my room. He nodded his head vaguely to a point above the door. He pointed out towards the top of the door. Here, it has been put up. Not a very neat job. Conceded Jackson. Conceded, admitted. Jackson admitted, not a very neat job, meaning the prison authorities have not done their job correctly. They have not done their job efficiently. Why do you think that Jackson admitted that the job has not been done efficiently?
Because thrice Evans has escaped.
Okay, but when he notices the bug, to which Jackson says not a very neat job, what does he mean to say? He wanted this microphone to be put up in such a way that it is not noticed, it could not be seen by Evans, right? And if Evans had seen it, if Evans had noticed it, now what it is, it's of no use. If Evans had noticed the presence of that bug, then Evans must have planned accordingly, isn't it? So the purpose with which that bug was put up there, that purpose would not be served now. So he wanted it to be put up there very secretly so that it is unnoticed by Evans. But now he has noticed. They are not. They don't honestly think I'm going to try too. Evans says, why they are doing? Because they don't think. They don't think I'm honest. They don't trust me. They think I'm trying to fool them. They are taking no chances, Evans. Nobody in his senses would take any chance with you. Anyway, governor tells him very clearly, Evans, they don't want to take any chance. They don't want to take any chance with you. When you are there, they don't want to take chance because this is what he is conveying. Earlier experiences would not allow them to be careless, them to be casual with him, because earlier also he had escaped and befooled them very cleverly. Is that clear? Oh, fine. So the rest we shall continue tomorrow, right?